G'day, you're listening to the Virtual Staff Room, and this is episode 10, Open-Minded. I had an interesting email a couple of days ago from a guy called Rob Ruberry, and Rob's a teacher up on Bribie Island in Queensland. And Rob was asking about the use of open source technologies in education, and he mentioned particularly a thing called Joomla and Mambo and Moodle, all strange names but with very interesting applications to education. And Rob knows a fair bit about this sort of stuff, so he suggested coming on the show and having a bit of a chat. About the same time, I happened to hear from another mate of mine who teaches down in the Anglican Grammar School in Sydney, southwest of Sydney, down near Camden, a guy called Jason Hando. And Jason is also somewhat of an expert on these open source technologies, and so I thought it'd be really interesting to get these two guys on the show and have a bit of a chat about Joomla, about Mambo, about Moodle, about how they apply in education, and I guess the bigger question of where does the open source software movement fit in terms of schooling and education, and what should schools be looking at in terms of dealing with all this stuff. So I think you'll find it's a pretty interesting conversation this week. It does geek out a couple of times in places because we try not to make it technical, but we're talking about software, so there are a couple of places where I guess we kind of geek out a little, so forgive us for that, but I'm sure you'll find the conversation stimulating and interesting. And if you don't know anything about all this open source stuff, this is probably going to be a great introduction, and if you do know something about it, I'm sure you'll find it interesting. So enjoy. I'm sitting here today talking to two teachers. I've got Rob Ruberry up in Queensland. Hi, Rob.
G'day, Chris. How are you?
And I've got Jason Hando. Jason's down in the Camden area in southwest Sydney. Hi, Jace.
How you going, Chris?
Excellent. And let me just explain where this conversation is coming from today. I got an email from Rob in Queensland a couple of weeks ago commenting on a previous episode of Virtual Staff Room where I had been talking to a colleague of his up in Queensland, Michael, and we had a little bit of an exchange over email, and Rob suggested that a great topic we might like to talk about on the show is the use of open source technologies like Joomla and Mambo and even Moodle as a solution for schools to be able to easily manage either the creation of websites or the management of content, or even all the way down to complete learning management systems. So both Rob and Jason have a bit of a background in these areas, so I thought it'd be great to get these guys together and have a bit of a chat about how these technologies can assist educators to do what we do even better. So I'm just going to throw it over to Jason first. Jason, I thought, can you just give us a quick overview of what actually some of these technologies, and in particular Joomla, are all about?
Sure, Chris. I'll start off with Joomla. Joomla came from Mambo, the original version of Joomla, and both of these systems are essentially ways to create and manage websites. And people call them content management systems, which is a good term, CMS. However, I think essentially people could just think of them as ways to create a website, and then once the website's created, they can use Joomla and Mambo as a tool to add and refine the content on the website. And they're just two extra tools that are on the, I suppose you would call it, the open source landscape, available to schools, that lend themselves really well to what schools generally do with respect to the internet and trying to communicate information to everyone from parents to students to teachers and even people in the community.
Yep, that's right. Every school seems to have a website, and it's a matter of having an easier way to manage it. Rob, can you just give us a bit of your take on the situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jason's done a great description on Joomla and on content management systems. Certainly, for me and my experience with the Joomla sites we've had here in Queensland, is that content expiry is a big plus. We're constantly having schools that are chasing their tails, trying to keep content up to date, and that expiry, being able to set an expiry date on content items is certainly a big plus. The ability there to be able to modify things without needing to know a whole range of technical web-related issues, I suppose, or being able to deal with sophisticated software and programs to be able to manage your website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, the beauty of something like Joomla is that anyone with an internet connection can basically work on your site, provided they have adequate permissions to do so.
Yeah, that's a pretty good description of it. Just for, I'm sure we've got people who are listening to this who are going, I kind of get that. So I'm going to give you my perspective on it, and that is, every school seems to want to have a website, and they use it to communicate with parents or to, just basically, advertise what they do or that type of thing. And I know in the past at schools I've worked at, because I've ended up being the technology guy, it's always fallen on my shoulders to, make the school website. And so over the years, I've done it with FrontPage, I've done it with Dreamweaver, I've done it with PageMill, I've done it with all sorts of different technologies. But the big problem with most of them is they're essentially static technologies. You create a page, you put information on it, and when that information changes, generally me or whoever's the web person has to go on and manually change all that content, and that becomes a pain in the neck. And as you guys will probably attest, what typically happens is you end up with lots of pages that just get out of date because they just get forgotten, or people don't change them, or people forget to change them, and pretty soon you've got people coming to your website to look stuff up, and it's either irrelevant or out of date, or hasn't been updated since 1997.
And unfortunately, Chris, humans being humans judge us on what we don't have up to date and not what we do.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Parents and community members quite often see a couple of things out of date, and then they'll bypass the website and say, no, it's always outdated, so why would I bother going there, sort of thing.
Exactly right. It's very much a first impressions thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
And it also affects the way that your website performs in search engines. If search engines are crawling the web all the time, and they can tell when a web page is static for a long period of time, it'll drop down the list easily.
Yeah. Now, the school I'm currently teaching at, we have a web page, of course, and I made it a couple of years ago and has some content on it, and it's essentially not changed since I made it, and that's a bit of a problem. And it's got the usual stuff, some information about the school and some information about parents, who to contact to come to the school. And once a year they give me a little piece of information and say, can you update this? The fees have changed, or the uniform shop has, changed its opening hours or whatever, and you go and change those couple of things. But that's pretty minimal stuff. What you guys are talking about with technologies like Joomla is a website creation back-end technology where you don't have to really know how to make a website, you just have to be able to go in and manage the information that's on that website.
Yeah, essentially it's like working with Microsoft Word. So any article on the Joomla site when you log into the front end, has a small editing icon next to it. And so if I was someone working in the office of a school and I had permission to edit articles, I could just click on the editing icon and I'll get a little box that looks just like a Microsoft Word document with a lot of different buttons like bold and underline and left and right justify and a few things like that. And I can just change the text. I can move graphic around if I want to. I can change what graphic's shown and hit the save button, and the changes are saved in the system. And depending on my permissions, they are either committed to the public web page or they're waiting for someone to approve it.
Yeah, I like that feature. I like the idea that there's a workflow involved, that I could go in and change a page, but someone else has got to go and approve it before it goes live. That's a great idea.
And Chris, trust me, from our end, principals really like that feature too.
Yeah, I'll bet. And I've often felt enormous responsibility, because they say go and make the web page, and you sort of sit there and you go, well, I don't want to go and run around and just have to okay every single sentence I write on this thing. But by the same token, I also don't want the responsibility of being the content creator, because when things go wrong, then it all falls back on me. So I really like that idea that you could you contribute content, but then it has to go to someone to approve that content. Great idea.
Yeah, well, that's built into Joomla. It's not an added feature or anything. It just comes standard out of the box with that feature.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting you say out of the box because it's a web technology, right? So and it's free. So you just go to the Joomla website and just download a copy and install it, and
yeah, it's not quite as easy as that.
We wish, Chris. We wish.
The easiest way I've installed it is through the cPanel Fantastico series of scripts.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did that the other day. It was so simple. I went in, clicked the button, said turn this on, and bang, it was on. It's great.
But a lot of schools have their own server.
Fantastico is a lovely feature.
Yeah.
And you've got to pay for that Fantastico feature if you want to download it and have it running on your server.
Right.
Whereas...
so you're saying that because schools generally host their own sites, that they're not going to have that facility necessarily?
No, but it's not that much harder. I mean, if a school has its own web server, then it knows a little bit about that sort of thing. So it's not hard to generate, the files that you need and the database that will run it in the end. And it has its own little automatic script that populates the database once it knows the database name and the database password. So it's not that hard, really.
Yeah. Now, without getting overly technical, these things all run on PHP and MySQL?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay.
Correct.
Well, Moodle, you were talking about Moodle before. That runs on a number of different databases. And I've got it running on one of my servers on Postgres, which is an alternative SQL database to MySQL. It's apparently a lot better. I haven't noticed any performance improvement, but other than that, I think Joomla has to run on MySQL.
Right.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I've heard that, yeah. At where I'm teaching now, internally we run a thing called SharePoint, which is a Microsoft technology that I guess is similar, but I find it fairly limiting. And, of course, it's not free. So the big plus for something like Joomla is that it's completely free. And that's
so you guys
free as
at your school, you would pay for SharePoint at your school, Chris?
Well, SharePoint is included in the Server 2003 license, but, of course, you've got to pay for that.
Yeah. With us at Queensland Schools, you might have heard, we're now moving to a MOE, a managed operating environment. Schools will have that. That's all built into the package. So SharePoint 3 will be up and running, which has some nice little integrated RSS and a whole range of other features. But, it seems to be a great out-of-the-box intranet solution. I think the issues that we encounter, I suppose, is saying to schools, a lot of schools want to have a all-in-one intranet/internet website.
Yeah.
And, for some schools that might work, but for the way our EQ network set up, it certainly won't at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing's really clear, and that is that, the days of static websites where a person has to be responsible for going and manually creating pages using some sort of HTML editor, I mean, those days are over, right?
Yeah, they're gone.
Let's hope so. Yeah.
I mean, look at blogs. Blogs are a typical example of anybody being able to write their own web pages.
Yeah, so the sorts of technologies you guys are referring to are essentially Web 2.0 technologies, right?
I don't know.
Yes.
Well, in the sense that you don't have to be the content expert, and in the sense that anybody can create content, and so in that sort of sense, they're sort of Web 2.0-ish, I guess.
Well, also in the sense that you do have that RSS feed built in, so you can, and you can also, depending on your site, you can feed information in via like a news feed,
right, into
your site as well. So you've got RSS both ways.
So give me some ideas. You guys have both had some experience in implementing this sort of stuff in a school. So, okay, like I need to redevelop our school website at the moment. What sort of things should I be looking, or give me some ideas about the sorts of things I could be doing using these technologies?
For us, I suppose we're a slightly different situation, Chris. We're lucky in that for any Education Queensland schools, Joomla is automatically installed for us.
Right.
All we really need to do is put our hand up and say yes, send an email to our service desk and say, yes, we want Joomla installed. They will do everything for us, manage it all. They will back up everything. They will basically set the whole site up for us with a bare skeleton. And then it's up to schools to to learn how to drive it, so to speak.
Yeah. Now you can customise that with school logos and change the colour scheme and all that sort of stuff. Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. You are restricted in that, as Jason was saying before, there are lots of modules which are like add-on features to Joomla and components. Under our build, because everything is controlled centrally, schools don't have the luxury of being able to choose all the additional features they want installed.
Yeah.
So essentially we get a calendar, we get a gallery management tool, which allows us to upload things like everything from podcasts to photos to multimedia files, flash files, etc., to documents, and then obviously all the basic Joomla functionality that we've talked about, like the ability to add content, set expiry dates, etc.
Right. So, sorry, Jace, did you want to kick in there?
Well, I wanted to ask Rob something. Do you have access to the back end of Joomla?
Absolutely, yes. So teachers are able to, or whoever's administrating, we have all the passwords are controlled by, like, every EQ person has their own email address, so their username and password that they have for that controls the access levels. So if you're an administrator at school, you would have access to the back end of Joomla. But again, without getting into too many technical features, they don't have the super administrator rights. The highest level of rights they have is administrator, which basically means they can install templates to change the look and feel and color scheme of the website, but they can't add modules or components.
So it sounds like they can do everything except really stuff it up.
Well, the issue is around security, mostly being that because Joomla is an open source product, as you know, anyone can write a third-party app for Joomla, a component or a module, and that essentially is or does become a weak point or a security hole, so to speak. So I think they're pretty keen on controlling exactly what goes on there and managing the security side that way.
Yeah, right. And Jace, you've done a fair bit of this stuff, haven't you? Because you kind of run a little thing on the side where you do this for other organisations and help them get set up on this, right?
Yeah,
I say a little thing on the side. I'm downplaying it a bit. It's actually quite a big thing on the side.
Oh no, it's a very little thing. It's an accident, really, not a train wreck though. No, it's just I had some friends who knew I was into technology and they were running businesses, and they said, "Can you build me a website?" So when you go looking for the best way to do it, you start with this sort of thing, really, if you know what you're talking about. And so Joomla just stood out as one of the best. I tried a lot of other ones. I tried Zoops, I tried Drupal, I tried a number of different ones, PHP Nuke and a few others. But this was the most intuitive and the one with the most community support, and I think that's something very important.
Yeah,
something I learned from Moodle, because I've been using Moodle for 4 or 5 years now. And Moodle is what it is because of the community, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I know Martin Doogie Amos did a great job to create it originally, but I think what it is today is just an amazing testament to what a group of people can do from all around the world.
Now, so Moodle started as an Australian project. Was that originally Australian technology?
Yeah, it was a PhD project for Martin over at Curtin University in Western Australia.
Is that right? Because when I was in North America last year in Canada, and I visited a friend in Chicago, and I walked into her classroom and looked around, and they're all using Moodle, and I said, "Oh, I think that's Australian." And they went, "Yeah, it is." I thought it was great, but it's just fascinating to see, as you say, what was basically sort of a research project from someone in Western Australia, and to walk into a school in Chicago, and here it is as their primary method of delivering courseware. It was kind of
I think the amazing thing about it too is that scalability. I mean, to think of people being able to use it on a small site, and then universities to be able to use it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And the main motivation for him was how frustrated he was with Blackboard. He was the administrator at Curtin University of Blackboard.
Really?
And he was pulling his hair out, and he said there's got to be a better way to do e-learning, and that's what he built.
Yeah, for a free product, it is impressive what it can do. That's absolutely for sure.
Very powerful.
So I'm about to redevelop a website. What sort of things can I put on there? So the principal can go on, and the principal can put like a update their message once a week if they want to. Or the people in the office, if they want, can go on and put an update. The sports carnival was cancelled because of the wet weather or that type of thing. You can be really instant about it with that.
Is it worth us, Jason, just mentioning just the basics of security levels to sort of answer the question there?
Oh, you could if you want. I think the type of people who would listen to this would like to know some of the features.
Yeah.
I've got a small list here that I could go through.
I mean, when you're talking about that, Rob, I'm guessing that, if I can summarise that, you're basically saying that there's different security levels, and so depending on which level you are, depends on what you can change.
Just really basically, obviously you've got your general public, everyone that's going to see it.
Yep.
You've got what we call registered users.
Yep.
For us, that's anyone that has an email address in your school.
Yep.
And then you've got special users, which would basically, there's subsets of each of those, but special users obviously have the right to be able to add, edit, or publish content depending on their level from there.
Yeah. Okay. Does it integrate
before,
with existing systems? So, for example, most schools, I guess a lot of schools run Microsoft stuff, and I guess they're going to have an Active Directory with all the kids' names in it. Does it integrate with that sort of stuff?
I believe, and I don't know if you played much around with version 1.5, Jason, but I know it's got a lot better LDAP capabilities. But we've had a couple of guys just over the past couple of days looking. They're running a Novell network, and they've certainly toyed a bit with it, and they're looking at doing exactly what you're describing, being able to authenticate based on the users there.
Yeah, because it's pretty cool if you don't have to sort of log into systems multiple times. It's really nice if you can have a system where you log in once and you're just into everything. But
that's very important.
That's not always easy to achieve.
No, it's not. And you could use Joomla just as a public website and not worry about locking anything away on it. And that's an easy way to not have to worry about integrating it with your Moodle site. It's your Moodle site that really desperately needs to be authenticated because of the number of users that are going to go through it.
Sure.
And that's quite well covered in Moodle, in my opinion.
In the schools you've worked in before, like setting this sort of thing up, have the Moodle servers and the Joomla servers and stuff been hosted on site? Like, do schools generally host this stuff themselves, or do they host it outside the firewall, like on a server somewhere?
Yeah, there's a mix of approaches. I personally have my own server off campus, and I run my Moodle site there for 750 users, and it runs fine. It's on shared hosting.
And that's hosted in a data center somewhere?
That's right, down in Melbourne. Okay. And cost me $20 a month. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty cheap. Yeah. And that's been running fine and allows me to do everything I want. But then again, I don't have walk-up access to it.
Yeah.
And there's other features you probably want. And so a lot of schools do have their own server, and there's a company in Sydney that covers over 1,000 schools, mainly public schools, and they have their own web server that bundles things like Moodle, Joomla, and other things like, I think it's called Easy School Reports, which is an online reporting package, and they're trying to market. They're starting to think about marketing to private schools, and so they'll basically send you a server that's pre-configured. You just plug it in. There might be a little bit of setup, but essentially out of the box, it just runs all this web services type thing.
Right, and that's to host it internally.
Yeah, internally on site. There's one disadvantage I see.
The big problem with that, though, is that you got to have the bandwidth to do that.
Yeah, that's a problem. But the other big problem is 24/7 watch of it.
Yeah.
Like my one does not drop off. It's had 99.9% uptime since I started it 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's unbelievable. But that's because it's in a data center.
Yeah.
And there's professionals monitoring the whole data center.
I don't know about you guys, but from where I sit as like an IT manager type guy, I just keep seeing the infrastructure within schools just growing and growing and growing. And I had a conversation with my principal today, about some work we did on one of the servers, and she kind of looked at me and went, servers, And I went, we've got like 8 or 9 servers, and she went, oh, I thought we just had one, like, I don't think that people necessarily understand the extent to which the infrastructure in schools really grows, well, I don't know, this has been my experience, maybe it's not been yours, but I just find it can get really out of hand.
I think most people are happy that they don't know. They just want to see it running and running smoothly and leave it to a couple of people. Or...
Mate, I'm the IT manager and I think that.
Yeah. Our setup, I suppose, is a little bit different in that just recently, I won't say recently, last June there was a directive for all Education Queensland schools that they weren't able to host their websites outside of the EQ space that they were given.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons that Joomla became a solution for schools. So we had a lot of schools that were basically paying outside providers to host their site, so to speak. And the crazy thing was they were given 8 gig of space themselves, but they weren't using it.
Yeah.
So it was sort of double dipping, so to speak. So they basically put a directive out that, hey, look, schools, you've got this space, we're providing it for you. You're paying for it with your internet usage per year. Let's give you some ways that you can utilise this space instead of going outside to do that. So, yeah.
And I know every time I go to a conference and we talk about IT type stuff, you really start to realise there's no one size fits all solution to any of this because. What you guys are doing with EQ and what the Catholic Ed system does here and the Department of Ed does here in Australia and then the independent schools all doing their own things. Like everyone takes a different approach to managing this stuff and it's very hard to come up with one solution that seems to fit everybody.
No, that's true. I think there is one trend though. I think the business world is leading the way when it comes to outsourcing.
Yeah.
And I think education's got to catch up.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I absolutely. I think that's right. I'm starting to see that happen in a few places. And I guess the sorts of things you're talking about with this open source software is kind of an example of where that's starting to happen. I mean, essentially what EQ is doing from what what you're saying, Rob, is it's like a version of outsourcing, really.
Well, yeah. I mean, the idea is to trying to tie everything into, and it is probably a utopian solution, but to tie everything into like a one number suits all help desk.
Yeah.
So that anyone that has issues, instead of having to have, someone with an in-depth knowledge based at a school level, and then set up a site. You guys know what it's like. You set up a particular site at a school, and then you move on, and all of a sudden someone walks in and says, "What's going on here?" How is this set up? That's different to what I'm used to. So I suppose they're trying to create some sort of consistent look and feel. And then, so if someone walks from one school to another, they've got that consistent look and feel to the
there's a lot to be said for that approach, I think.
There is a lot to be said.
Yeah, well, look, certainly there's downsides to everything as well, and like all schools, I suppose, we encounter things like our internet filtering that no doubt you guys encounter as well, that stops schools from getting to some of those Web 2.0 resources, etc., that they want to get their head around.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's about finding that happy medium.
Well, it certainly sounds like the whole Joomla, Mambo. Now, if I just clarify, Mambo was originally the project, and then the development team forked into 2 different streams, didn't it? Joomla and Mambo, and they each went off in their own sort of slightly different directions.
Yeah, at the moment, they're still sharing, again, without getting too much into it, they're certainly sharing the same code base. So that means, you could grab a template from Mambo and use it on Joomla, etc.
So Mambo still exists as a project in its own right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, right. Okay.
Yes, it does. When Joomla 1.5 comes out, which is in beta release at the moment, when that hits the deck as a full release, that will be a completely new code base. So after that, things will change. But yeah, Mambo as such is still operational, and Joomla as well, of course.
Right. Well, I know I'm going to look at it, and I installed it on a hosted server I've got the other day, and I used what you were talking about before, the Fantastico cPanel, is it called? And
cPanel is the major part of how you administer your web space.
Right.
Fantastico is one part of cPanel.
Right, okay. Well, I know I just clicked into this thing and there was a series of choices, and one of them was Joomla, and I ticked the box and it said wait right here and check back in a couple of minutes, and I did, and it said your site's now live. So from that point of view, it was dead simple. Even I could do it.
Yeah,
So.
very easy.
I think the other thing too, to make people realise is that once that site is there, it's then a matter of working around and understanding how it works. And I think the biggest thing that we find out there in schools is that those people that have dabbled with Dreamweaver and FrontPage and the other web apps out there have a preconception of what a web page is, and sometimes that sort of gets in the way of Joomla.
Yeah,
it is completely different.
You got more to unlearn.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's right.
Very good point. Because the design is separate from the content.
Yep.
So if you can change a website in an instant just by uploading a different template. The content stays the same.
Yeah, and I guess an example, if there'd be a lot of people listening to this who have tried blogging and with services like WordPress or Blogger, where you can go in, you can decide to change your theme, and you go and you choose a new theme, and suddenly it all looks different, but it all says the same thing that it always says.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's this segregation between form and content, which I think was probably the killer difference. When the web changed, that was really the big change, wasn't it? This divorce between content and form.
I also like the variety you have in the Joomla extensions. I mean, people just have to go to joomla.org, and which is the main website for Joomla, and they can click on extensions and see that there's in excess of, I think, 1,000 extensions that you can look at and download and install. And some of the ones that I've used are just outstanding. Like, they just do it so quickly and so easily. They've been designed by an individual or a group of people who knew what they wanted to do. Like, for example, there's one that I use called Chronoforms, and it allows you to basically build a form to have as many questions as you like for people to type their answers in. They can choose things from a drop-down box, and then they can hit the submit button, and it all goes into the database and is waiting for you to read.
Wow.
So in other words, it has a potential to revolutionise the way we collect information in schools. Like, if students want to pick a sport in a school, at our school they have to go up to a wall that's covered in paper, and they have to write their name on a sheet of paper, which then gets pulled down, and they get entered into a database.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So someone asked me about this the other day. They said, we do like an activities thing at school once a year, and they said next year when we do this, could we have a form where kids can go to the site and actually just fill in the form, and it goes into a database, and then we can extract that database out and deal with it. So this is the sort of thing you're talking about, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one way to do it. There's probably other ways to do it as well, but it certainly works well for me. I've had it working on a number of different sites to collect data from different people, and the other thing is, if you know something about MySQL, which is just a database with tables and fields and records, you can actually grab that data out of there and do whatever you want with it. You can put it in whatever form you like. You can even have it exported into a spreadsheet and graph it.
Yep.
Also, talking about those add-ons, we have a component added to our website which is called Bookmarks, and it's a great resource for teachers and students. It basically allows the teachers to bookmark a website and have it appear in multiple categories, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
So that's on the Banksia Beach website, and with that, kids can actually rate the websites, like a 5-point scale. Again, because
that's a neat idea. I like that.
Yeah, because everything's writing to a database, it actually pulls up the number of hits, so you can find out, what site's the most popular. And it shows a little thumbnail images for your major sites. It shows a little thumbnail image of the site, so kids can get a quick view of what the site looks like and navigate to it from there. So for us, it's a tool that teachers would go home, bookmark all the sites that they're going to use with their kids, come along to school, use those sites with the kids, and then of course the kids can log on to them at home and continue their learning at home as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So
And I especially like the way you just said you can like add ratings and things to that. Because I think once you add that social network into this, it becomes really powerful.
Yeah, and on that point, there's a wonderful add-on. It's a component called Community Builder, and I don't know if schools in Queensland have this feature, but it's
no,
amazing.
we don't. But yeah, I have.
Yeah, it's quite amazing.
I have heard of it.
The way people can build their profile, and it's almost like a MySpace for Joomla.
Huh, wow. The name... Where's the name come from? Every time I hear the name, I think of that Robin Williams movie, Jumanji, and imagine these charging elephants.
It's actually Swahili.
Oh, yeah.
Swahili for what?
What is it Swahili for?
Good question. I remember someone saying it's Swahili for something, but I'm sure it'll be written somewhere on the Joomla website.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. We often think, we send flyers around saying, Joomla workshops or whatever else, and the first thing people think is that we're swearing at them. So
yeah, it means all together, or as a whole.
All together.
As a whole.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice concept. Now, when you look at things now like Ubuntu Linux, which is another one with an African name, we paid our licensing bill to Microsoft recently, and it adds up. It's $20,000 or whatever it is a year just for this for the privilege of using Windows and Office and a few servers. And it's a lot of money. And when you start to look now at things like Ubuntu and you've got these back-end stuff like we've been talking about, Joomla and Mambo and everything else, you really start to wonder that, is there a future in a couple of years' time when, people will really start to question where they're giving their dollars to, if some of this open source stuff can be as good or better than what we're currently paying big bucks for.
I think for a lot of people, Chris, it frightens them, open source, it's free, it's, it mustn't be good. Why would they be giving it away if it was,
it's funny you said that, because a couple of years ago I heard, what's the guy's name, Mad Dog someone, I can't think of his last name, but he's a big guru guy in the Linux community, and he was at a computer trade show in Sydney giving a talk about Linux, and this is way, 5 years ago or something, so it was kind of a bit new to me. And he was talking about why the enterprise would take open source software on, because if it's free, how can it possibly be good? And if there's no one company responsible for it, how can it be good? But I tell you, after listening to this guy talk and giving all sorts of insights into things, like, for example, when I won't single Microsoft out because everyone's the same, but, you take a piece of proprietary code like that, you don't really know what's in it. You don't know how well it's written. You don't know if there are bugs in it, and if there are bugs, whether you're hearing about all of them and when they're going to get fixed. But when it's open source and everybody can see the code,
you're not hiding anything.
You're not hiding anything, and it's no programmer wants to put their name to crappy code. And so people who write that code actually do the best job they possibly can do. And if it's not great, someone comes along and makes it great. Open source makes enormous sense to me, more so than the proprietary model.
I think it's that whole philosophy too, with that, it's like the Web 2.0 apps, it's bringing a community together. It really does focus on the positives rather than that, again, not mentioning Microsoft, but, the one company outdoing another. So to speak. So,
and look, I'm not singling Microsoft out because Apple's the same, and there's tons of companies out there who all have closed code, although some of Apple's is open. But it makes enormous sense to me, that this idea of open code. And I suppose I should throw in there really quickly, if anyone's listening to this who doesn't really understand what this term open source means, it simply means it's software that the underlying code for that, or the source code for that software is freely available, and anyone can come in and look at it and change it and whatever, so long as they make those changes also freely available. And that's really a hugely powerful community approach to building software. And I think you've only got to look at when Netscape was king of the browsers, and then Internet Explorer came over, and I think there was lots of reasons why Internet Explorer won that battle. But Netscape would have just died completely had the company not given it over to the open source community and said, hey, guys, here's the source code, go and do what you want with it, and that became Firefox. And you look at what Firefox is doing now, and it's enormously powerful, growing much faster than Internet Explorer.
Yeah, it's amazing how I was listening to The World is Flat on audiobook today.
Oh, yeah,
It's a book by Thomas Friedman.
Yep.
And he was talking about how Apache came into being.
Yeah.
And basically these people were dissatisfied with the way the NCSA, which was the standards body for web servers at the time, and a company, I think, that came out of Illinois University.
Yep.
They were dissatisfied with their progress on a decent web server with decent patches that made it stable and working. So they just basically said to them, do you mind if we build our own? And Illinois said, no worries, as long as you reference us as the originators of the original source code, which they did, and that's part of open source.
Yep.
And away they went, and they made Apache. And they made something that was better than what Microsoft was trying to do at the time. They were trying to come out with their own web server. So was IBM. So these massive companies with billions of dollars worth of assets couldn't build as good a solution as these part-time coders around the world.
It's one little phrase I remember from that speech that I heard Mad Dog give, and that was, it's pretty hard to hide persistent bugs when there's 100,000 pairs of eyes looking at the code.
Yeah.
It's just not going to last. It's going to get fixed.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's that same community approach, I think, that pervades things like Wikipedia. And Jimmy Wales, when he was here a few weeks ago, talking about Wikipedia, and his underlying message was basically, look, a lot of people don't trust Wikipedia because anyone can edit it, but your worldview on whether you think the world's full of good people or bad people is kind of going to colour your opinion on whether open source is a good thing or a bad thing. If you think everyone's out to destroy things and pull things apart and make them worse, if that's your worldview of humanity, then you probably don't think open source is a good idea. But if you believe people are basically good and the good guys eventually win, then you probably believe open source is a good thing. So I think it comes down to a worldview.
Yeah, I think so too, and it suits education. This is the thing that I'm amazed at is how little schools have really picked up on open source software, yet they have got a limited budget.
Yeah, it is amazing.
And so they could really do with the technology at the rate that it comes at.
There's a school in Blue Mountains, I think it might be, I shouldn't mention names, but I think it's Blue Mountains Grammar, I could be wrong though, where everything is open source. They don't have any proprietary software on site. All the workstations are Linux, all the servers are Linux, everything's open source. They probably pay some people to come and look after that, but their actual bill for software is zero.
Yeah, well, there's one added advantage, and that is that you can hand the software to students on a disk, or just give them the URL and say download it and use it at home.
Yeah.
And so straight away, you're not just limited to the classroom.
Yep.
Like my students, they walk in, they're using FileMaker as their database in Year 12, and the syllabus requires them to learn how to build a certain type of database. They cannot do that at home. Because it's a commercial software that costs a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure.
And so with open source, you just circumnavigate that problem and you make learning more accessible.
Yeah. Sorry, Rob, did you want to throw something in there?
Yeah, no, just saying it's actually amazing. I think a lot of schools are, again, that frightened that if it's open source, if it's free, then, I really shouldn't be putting it on my system because, it can't be the best software.
Yeah, it is. It's a pervasive attitude. If it's free, it can't be good. Yeah.
Yeah, we
I should point out to that though that when Richard Stallman wrote that manifesto about free software, that it was free as in the freedom to change it, not necessarily as in free as in cost. That when they talk about free software, he means free with the freedom to make whatever changes you want. And normally it costs nothing as well, but that's not really what the word free is supposed to be referring to. So sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. Go on.
No, that's fine. Actually running a session at the Innovation Centre today, and we had just a little session on preparing teachers for the managed operating environment, and part of the software on there just amazed me. We ran a session where we covered some of the free/open source software that they've got on the system includes, EarthenView, your batch conversion program, Audacity, which obviously we know.
Yeah.
even programs like, Photo Story, which I know isn't open source as such, but, basically free and schools should be using it. All of this stuff was installed and teachers were saying, I haven't seen this before. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to be getting this on our operating system. Oh, we might have to start using this. And for some of them, it was that connection. Oh, well, if Education Queensland is putting it on our computers, even though it's open source, we'll use it now.
Yeah.
So, it's funny. Some people just need that little bit more directive before they start going down that road.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been an interesting conversation. We sort of started out, fairly specific, talking about Joomla and a few other specific products, and we've sort of opened up into this idea of open source generally and how it applies to education. But I think it's been a worthwhile conversation having, because it does hold enormous promise, I think, for schools. As you say, they're on tight budgets and they want to do a lot, and this is one way of trying to achieve those ends.
Definitely, I think it is, and there's people who are really pushing this, like Steve Hagedorn, who does his own podcast. I think it's called EdTech Live.
Okay.
You can get it through the iTunes Music Store and online.
Yep.
But he's a big proponent of open source, and one of the things he's looking at, and he's installing it in schools, are thin clients that run Linux. So in other words, you've got an open source operating system called Linux. You've got old computers, which it doesn't matter because the server's the most important thing in a thin client network.
Yep.
And so students are able to do web browsing, they're able to access Google Documents, they're able to use things like GIMP for graphics.
Yep.
All Moodle sites to do quizzes and to do forums, and blog sites like Blogger and so on.
And I hate to say this, but we decided not to. We lease our computers at school, and we decided not to roll them over this year because they were still going fairly strong. We thought we'd get another year out of them. And a couple of people complained and said, "Why didn't we roll the computers over?" And when I look at it and think, you know what? Mostly in the classroom, you do a bit of word processing and browse the web. And
that's it.
I know there are some really adventurous teachers who go beyond that, and they try on all sorts of interesting things, and some of the media classes are doing some cool stuff. But by and large, the integrated, and I'll use this in quote marks, the integrated approach to ICT in the classroom involves the internet and a word processor.
Yeah. And computers are getting cheaper. I mean, you've got $200 laptops coming out. Asus just launched a $199 laptop. And you've got the one laptop per child program.
Yeah.
I think the revolution will be when it becomes accessible for all students and they all have regular access to it. So it's not just integrated, it's embedded.
Yeah,
it's invisible.
Absolutely. I think we live in exciting times. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. I think this has been a really worthwhile discussion.
No problem, Chris. Thanks for the opportunity.
Likewise.
You're welcome, Rob. Thanks for suggesting it. So I guess we'll cut it there, but I'm really pleased with the ground we've covered and the sorts of issues that have come up. I think they're worth other teachers starting to think about this stuff, even if we did kind of geek out a couple of times.
We are geeks, aren't we?
Always happens.
Yeah. So, Rob, thank you very much for joining us.
Not a problem.
And
thanks, Rob.
All the best with your Joomla endeavours, Jason.
Yeah, same with you, mate. Good luck up there.
No problem.
All right. Catch you later, guys. Bye.
See ya. Okay, thanks. Bye.
The whole point of the Virtual Staff Room podcast is this idea that you, as a teacher, you sit in a staff room occasionally and you'll sit and have interesting conversations with your colleagues. And what we're trying to simulate here online in a podcast is that same kind of thing. So if you've got something you'd like to talk about, something educational, something related to technology, why don't you drop me a line? Do what Rob did. Just send an email to chris@virtualstaffroom.net. and let me know what's on your mind, and maybe we can organise to get together online somehow and have a chat about it. I'm sure it would be of interest to tons of other people. It's always amazing the feedback I get from these little podcasts, the people who find them useful and interesting, so it makes it really worthwhile. If you've got any thoughts about what you've heard on this episode or any others, please go along to the website at www.virtualstaffroom.net and leave a comment. I've had to turn the commenting protocols to be a bit stricter lately because I was getting a lot of comment spam. but hopefully that's died down a bit now, so I will try and relax that a bit more. So please, if you're having a bit of trouble leaving a comment, please persevere. We do love to get comments from people who have listened to the show, and we'll endeavour to work with that. So appreciate your thoughts. Well, that's about all we've got time for this episode. So I guess until next time, my name is Chris Betcher, and you've been listening to the Virtual Staff Room.